guys can understand me with it on, I'm sure. I'm Espa Bowen. I'm with the State Department of Health, and I brought some of my team with me today to give you guys an overview of what they do in the department regarding licensure. I've been with the state for 23 years. Most of it has been in protective health services, dealing with licensure, workplace medical plans, and HMO. We do a lot of work in that area. So we hope we don't bog you down with a lot of information, but you can always call us or email us on anything that you have questions on. We bought some booklets today, and we also bought some of our cards. So at the end, if you want a card, you just come up and get one. The booklets that Naomi has, which is my assistant, she'll pass those around. Those are not for you to keep. We bought one of each for workplace, for home health, residential care, adult daycare, assisted living, and nursing homes. Is there one in there for CNs as well?
Yes, it is.
In the CN. So if you guys want to look at those and just review them while we're doing the presentation, it's okay. Again, if you have some questions, if you would hold them to the end, so we can answer them all for you. Okay? Yeah. Introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Naomi. I am Ms. Espa's administrative assistant, and I provide administrative support to Mike, Marjorie, Agnes, and Grace, along with 2 other administrative support staff. And what I do is when you guys mail in your license renewal applications with the payment, we get that processed and we log it and we forward it to one of the planning specialists. And also with the notice of changes, changes to administrator. What we do is we go into the ACO system in a license database and we change that information. If there's any additional information that we need, you may receive a letter or a call from us asking for you guys to provide that information. That's what I do.
Tell them how long you've been there.
Been with the state for 6 years. I've been with Ms. Espa's department for going on 2 years.
Hi, I'm Mike Todd. I'm one of the reviewers that you guys would talk to on the phone looking for your license. But today I'm going to talk to you guys about certificate of need. Certificate of need is only effective for you guys for one thing. That's if you own a nursing home. If you want to build a new nursing home from scratch without relocating, that requires a certificate of need. If you want to purchase a nursing home, that also requires a certificate of need. So, and in that, we're responsible for investigating the applicant. And the applicant can be the company and the person with the highest percentage, and a person who is what we consider the person with control that has influence on policies and stands to lose or gain financially. So we investigate everything that they've done, and it's not just if they're not only their operations here in Oklahoma, but their operations in all 50 states. So we do a lot of research, a lot of Googling. We dig up a lot of dirt sometimes, and sometimes we don't find any dirt. But that's kind of what we do, and that allows us to make a decision based on some criteria. We can deem anything we want to investigate, but there's only a few things that we can deny. We can deny on civil money penalties above $36,000 or more. So we'll look at a survey, and if we have one penalty that's above that amount, we go through and read the whole entire survey because we want to know exactly what happened, and then we want to look at all the other surveys at the other facilities or prior surveys before that to see if this is a common deficiency throughout the practice of the applicant. So if we keep seeing the same tag number repeatedly showing up in the deal and we're reading them and the write-ups are the same, we would say that's systemic of the operations and not isolated to one facility. So we do that. The other thing we also look for is receiverships, monitors, in their business operations. We also look to see if they had any suspensions. That includes Medicare, Medicaid numbers. If you lose your certification, that's grounds for a denial. That means you meet two components. When you lose your certification, you meet two components of denial. One, you have a history of non-compliance because you have 3 times to get the survey corrected. You get the deficiency, you get a visit, a return visit. If it's not cleared by then, you get a 3rd chance. That's called the date certain. If they come out and the deficiency is still not cleared, you're terminated from Medicare and Medicaid participation. That leads it to us to go for a denial also, because that's a history of non-compliance with the standards. So that would click in it. Then if that happens, usually a receivership is coming along somewhere down the line, because the real estate company, if it's not owned by those individuals, will come in and place a receiver in there to get the number back. So, but we review all that dirt that goes on in the facilities. We look at all the investigations, all the stuff that the survey team comes out. We read every bit of it. So you always kind of have to watch for those things. And we just kind of lump all that together into an investigative report. We also dig through the financials of every operator that's operating in the state of Oklahoma when they come in. We look through to see if they have enough monies to complete the transaction. Do they have enough money after the transaction is complete to continue with services? So they have to have sourced their money for an average of 1 month's expenses. So they provide us with a budget for a whole year. We take that money, we divide it up by 12. That's the money they have to have sourced. We check their financials, we call the banks, we follow up. So, but the main thing about that, you can't change ownership unless it's a family member without a certificate of need. So if someone is reviewed, like we reviewed Cindy in the back, and Blake didn't get reviewed, and Cindy says, I'm done, I'm selling my 50% to Blake. License isn't going to change hands, they're going to the same company, but Blake didn't get reviewed by the department, so now Blake is going to go underneath an investigation to see what he has. Might find nothing, but we have a duty to investigate. So, but now if Cindy and Blake are related, they're brother and sister, and she transfers it to him, there is no investigation because that is exempted, which we get into the exemptions. All family trades, transactions between existing owners that we've reviewed is exempted from certificate of need review. So facility can pass from father to son, mother to daughter, however you want to do it, grandmother to grandson. All those transactions are not reviewable. Most of the time they go through what's called a trust, and they send the trust to us, and they list out the beneficiaries, and then the beneficiaries then decide once they have control, once it's been deviated out of the courts, they'll either team up and run the facility, or they outright sell it. Most likely here lately, a lot of the beneficiaries have been just selling the stuff off. But the other thing for an exemption is, say your facility is running 96% or higher, or 93% higher in your occupancy for the last year, and you're looking to add beds, well, you can get 10% of your total bed capacity or a minimum of 10 beds. So if you got 150 beds, you can get 15 extra beds. If you have 50 beds, you can get 10 beds still and get to 60. So you always have to kind of look where you're at. And you can do that by building a wing or whatever, or making a single occupancy into a double occupancy. Then you can also use a certificate of need exemption to build a new facility, which we highly encourage because some of these facilities are really old. And you can move that. If you're here in the metro, you can move it within 7.5, well, in Oklahoma City Metro and Tulsa Metro, you guys can move your facility 7.5 miles within that area. If you do not have what they call a contiguous border, means your county doesn't touch Tulsa or Oklahoma City, you can only move it 3.5 miles. So, but those are also exempted. So you can build a new facility. We have some people who build a facility that's right next door to the facility, and then they make the old facility a parking lot. So you just have to tell us what you're going to do with that facility. It can never be a nursing home again. So if you, like, say you relocated it 3.5 miles and you sold it to another individual, and that individual wanted to turn it back into a nursing home, the department would say no, cannot be a nursing home. So it can never be a nursing home again unless there is need. And right now, the occupancy doesn't support a new facility. But they can turn it into an intermediate care facility for people with intellectual disabilities. We will allow that. What am I supposed to say? Management exemption. So you guys know about managers, right? They come in, they work for a fee, and they manage the facility, and they pretty much run the place. But you know that they're not responsible for anything that happens there. The only person that's responsible is the person on the license. That's the person who's going to receive the fine. That's the person that's going to receive all the credit. That's just how it happens. So, but a manager is another one you get an exemption on. All those exemptions are $100. All of the family estate planning is free. There's no charge for that because there's no certificate is required for those things. So, if you guys find yourself in the hospital world, we also do certificate need for psychiatric facilities. Those are in hospitals or freestanding. It's a little more complicated because they have to, if they're building one to provide new services, they have to provide that there's a need. In the need, you have to take all the facilities that are in that service area, has to be 75% or greater to get new services for that area. And then they have a timeline to build and everything. So then acquisitions there are going on with the hospital buy it, is sold to another group. They go through an acquisition, which is a lot faster and more streamlined than what the nursing home does. So, and then if you do want to file a standard certificate of need for a new facility, the occupancy rate in the area, and that's the 3.5 miles or the 7.5 miles, has to be greater than 85%. And on that, there is some exceptions, and you can try to rule a bad facility out. There's some language that allow you to do that, but it's burden on you to provide that proof to make us believe that their occupancy is down because of the services they provide. So that would take care of all the certificate of need information. Did I miss anything? So, am I talking about Grace? What's Grace? All right. Oh, stocks. Oh, yeah. The other thing is you can trade stocks in a certificate of need between existing owners. But if a new guy comes in, of course, that's going to trigger a certificate of need. So just remember when you're trading back and forth. And if you ever have a question whether it's going to trigger a certificate of need or not, file a 372. It's basically sends it to the department. The department renders a decision whether it's going to be exempted or it's going to require a certificate of need. Because we've had some people who have traded facilities. Well, they got a certificate of need, and you can't trade also. You have other facilities under the same umbrella of ownership, and say you start doing family estate planning, which is exempted. Well, it's exempted if you have a license. If your facility has not been acquired or built, it's not exempted. There's no trading allowed. You can't trade anything because if any transfer during the time the facility is being built will void the certificate out. So you always have to be careful. It's exempted once you have a license. You just can't do it to that one facility. You can do it for all the other facilities. You just want to build it for the one that's not built. And the intermediate care facilities for intellectual disabilities is probably the easiest one. If you do a 16 bed or less, those are pretty much granted because it's found that institutionalizing those people isn't the greatest way to house them or to have them live. And they do a lot better in these 16 bed, 8 bed models. And so a lot of those will get built that's brand new, or they go to an old nursing home and they'll take a wing and remodel it to be 8 or 16 beds. So we have a lot of those going on. Any questions? All right. I just wish you guys were owners. It would be a lot easier.
My name is Marjorie Bostic, and I've worked in public health since the late 80s. I started out initially at Oklahoma County Health Department, and I was there for about 14 years. And I've been at the State Health Department for the last 16 years in my current position. I'm just curious, how many people in here are going to be administrators of nursing homes? Can you show of hands? Okay. What about assisted livings? Any residential care, continuum of care, adult daycare? Well, I'd like to personally commend you for choosing to go into this profession. You're going to be charged with making sure that your facilities are ran properly and for the safety of the residents amongst our most vulnerable population. I'm going to be talking to you guys today about just the application process for nursing homes and assisted living. So I'm just going to run through what's involved in making out the application. The books that you all that are being passed around, you can request a copy of the book from the department, or you can download it off the internet and it won't cost anything. But those books usually, they tell you exactly how the facility is supposed to be ran. You have the laws and the rules in those books to tell you everything basically that you want to know. And if you ever have any questions, you're more than welcome to always call us. We have our business cards up here, and we'll be happy to answer any questions as you go through the application process, because we want you to fill out those applications correctly. We want them to be filled out correctly so that we can review them and go through the process as easy as possible. With the nursing home application, as Mike said, once you've been approved for a certificate of need for a nursing home and you're able to own, operate, or manage a facility, you fill out an initial license application. The initial license application is usually issued for 180 days. There's a fee of $10 per bed, which is that's pretty good fee. It's $10 per bed, and during that initial phase, the surveyors come out and they do an inspection and make sure that everything is being managed and operated according to law and rule. At the end of the 180 days, then you would make an application for a renewal license, and there's a fee that you pay at the time that you submit an application for renewal. Is $10 per bed times 3 years. The ODH form 953A, which is the application, would need to be filled out and signed and notarized. This signature on the application should be from the operating entity, the licensee, the person that is the managing member of an LLC or who's the president of an Inc. is responsible for signing those applications. We get a lot of applications in that are rejected because they're signed by the administrator. And it's very important that the licensee, the person that we're issuing, or the entity that we're issuing the license to, sign those applications. That's one of the reasons that we have a lot of applications that are considered deficient. There is a 953B that you fill out and that you complete. And on the 953B, we're asking who the licensee is, who the management company is, and also who the owner of the real estate or the property. So you fill those out, and then the C and the D are supplements to the A. And basically, if company A owns the operations of the facility, we would want to know who the stockholders are, who the members are, basically who owns that entity. If there's a management company, it's the same way, and also with a real estate company as well. Also, you would fill out a 953E, which is a staffing projection, and we basically have that filled out to make sure that you have the required number of staff based on the occupancy of the facility. And then there are some positions that are required, like you have to have a nurse, of course, a DON. So you fill that out, and like I said, most of the forms need to be signed by the owner of the facility. One of the other things that we check for is we check to see if the licensee, the operating entity, is currently active with the Secretary of State. In order to conduct business in the state of Oklahoma, you have to be registered with the Secretary of State. So we will look to see if the licensee is currently active with the Secretary of State. We also check to see if the management company is active with the Secretary of State. If this is an initial license application, one of the things that we require is closing documents or a transfer agreement. So before we can issue that initial license, we'll need those final documents for review. One of the other things that we also check for, we check to see if there have been any liens, any tax liens on the operating entity. We want to make sure that, you know, the entity the operating entity is paying their taxes appropriately. And if they've ran into some problems and they're on a payment plan, then that's required to be reported to the health department. With assisted living facilities, our continuum of care facilities, it's basically sort of the same thing. You have the application that you fill out. If there's been a change in ownership, that would require an initial license application, and that application process goes into a little bit more detail. But you would also fill out the 953B, the C, the D, and also the E. We also check the Secretary of State to make sure that the operating entity is licensed, or if the management company is licensed. We also require you to submit a fire marshal inspection. We want to make sure that the facility is properly in compliance with the fire marshal's requirements. For instance, if you look at this room, you'll see the sprinkler hedge. We want to make sure that, you know, you have a sprinkler system in place for those individuals that aren't able to self-evacuate as you're taking care of our most vulnerable populations. We look for the nursing home as well as the assisted living to make sure that the facility administrator is properly licensed, that your license is current. If you decide to go from one facility to another facility, you should notify the department as well as the licensure board, so that if there's a survey that's conducted, we want to make sure that the administrator that was there, that we have a record of that. Because let's say you went to another facility and something bad happened at one facility, you don't want to have those deficiencies fall back on you. So make sure that you protect your license. And anytime you relocate from one facility to another facility, that you notify the department as well as the licensure board. During the initial license application, we look at your assets, we look at your liabilities, If it's a brand new facility and you're wanting to establish a facility with the assisted living, you first complete an establishment application, then you complete the initial, and then you go for the renewal. During the establishment part of the application, we usually, the initial part of the license application, we usually look at your contract to make sure that those things that are required by state statute and rule are listed in the contract, which would include things such as assistance with personal care, how you're going to manage that, nursing supervision, intermittent or unscheduled nursing care, your medication administration, assistance with cognitive orientation or Alzheimer's, and assistance with transfer and ambulation. So those are some things that would need to be included in the contract. And in the book, it tells you exactly what things are required for that. Okay, if it's a brand new facility, you all would be working with plan review to make sure that the physical plant, the building, meets compliance. You have to have so much space per occupant. You have to have hot water. So they come out basically to inspect the facility to make sure that you're in compliance with state statute and rule. And they let us know. And once we get that approval, if you met all the requirements with the license, then we were able to issue a license at that particular time. Also, if you're going to do any modifications or any changes to the facility, if you're going to add a smoke room, if you're going to just do any type of modifications, then you would work with plan review to make sure that you're doing those things according to law and rule. Thank you.
Hello. Can you understand me? Or do I need to? Okay, my name is Agnes O'Hara. I have been with the state for 13 years, with Oklahoma State Health Department for 8, and with the Department of Human Services for 5. I'll actually pull this down. I'm here to talk to you today about adult daycare licenses and residential care homes. I understand quite a few of you are going to be with nursing homes, so I'll be a little brief. I did bring some applications so you can look over it while I talk. With adult daycares, we start off with the initial licenses. The application fee is a flat $75. With a residential care home, it's a flat fee of $50, and we start those off with probationary licenses. Residential care homes are a 2-year license, and adult daycares are an annual license. With all of our facilities at the beginning, whether it be probationary or initial, we require certain guidelines be met. We have you make sure and check that your local zoning is proper. We have you go through plan review to ensure that the building fits and meets the guidelines for the specific type of facility you're trying to have in the state of Oklahoma. We look for fire marshal reports. And actually, in regards to a residential care home, every time you renew, we are also looking for a fire marshal report with that renewal license. We're also looking at and examining your financials. We want to ensure that you have enough money for the year as well as the first month of operation, so that the clients that you have are taken care of and you're not folding as soon as you get started. We are also looking to see that we want to know your history. If you have had experience in long-term care facilities, and we do come across some people who have not, but we want to know more about you. We want to know about your staffing, how many people that you will have at the facility caring for the residents. So for instance, like with residential care, and actually with all of them, we're looking to see your dietitian, We are checking their licensure. We're checking the licensure for the doctor that will be on contract with the facility. We're looking at the LPN, the RN nursing licenses, and we're looking at the pharmacist license. So if we check those and find that they have some type of discrepancy or their license is not current, we will deem the application incomplete, and we will email you and contact you to let you know what's happening with your application. One other difference with residential care from the other facilities is we are checking with each renewal license your plumbing and your nutrition reports. We expect inspections. We expect you to have positive responses from those inspections, and we also check the licensure for those plumbers and electricians that come out to the facility. So if we cannot read the signature, if we cannot locate the person who came out and did those inspections, we will also deem that application incomplete, and we will be contacting you. Now, there are many parts to each facility type in which we require a lot of documentation. You are free to ask us questions. You are free to print off the applications that I just sent to you that are going around. On the third page of each application, it lets you know, depending on the licensure type, exactly what we are looking for. So if you are missing anything on those pages, then we will be contacting you again. Before we were sending out a whole bunch of letters, but now everything is mainly electronic. So we ask that when you are sending us your information, if there have been any changes to the emails, please let us know. Because otherwise, if we get the wrong information or something has changed, it'll just sit there on our desk. And it's not because we enjoy collecting applications, but if there are changes, you have to let us know. If something comes up, especially now with COVID, the COVID pandemic affecting everyone in the world, if something comes up at the State Health Department and we need to send some information to you, we need to have the correct information, otherwise you won't get that information. The same goes with addresses. If you are changing the address of the building, you do have to go through that plan review process again. However, if the owner or the operating entity, which usually has a separate address from the building, the physical building, if there's a change there, if there's a change in officers, we want to know and we want you to fill out that notice of change immediately. And you don't have to wait until the renewal licensure period to tell us. We understand that there are changes, we understand that things happen, and we just want to make sure and stay abreast of everything so that we can make sure and get the information that you need out to you. Another thing is we do follow and abide the Open Records Act. So if there's a lawsuit, if someone from the public wants information on your facility, the ownership, certain documents, of course, we will redact the financial documents. We will present that to them. We get phone calls from attorneys, judges, advocates all the time requesting information. And if we have the wrong information from you guys, it doesn't fall on us, it falls on you. As my colleague mentioned, we do check administrator licenses. Again, if you are no longer with that facility, please let us know. Don't depend on the facility to tell us. A lot of times they don't. And if something happens at that facility, that could affect your license. So that's the last thing you want to be trailing you, because we do, at our department, we do have the national background check. So if something happens, it will follow you. Also, I want to say that residential care homes specifically are usually a home setting. We rarely have any actual facilities. And adult daycares are usually in a facility setting, and they are usually adhering to people who are developmentally disabled. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to call and talk to us. Again, our website is a great resource. We have all the applications that you will need on there. We have the law and the rules up there. So if you have any questions or feel that maybe we've overstepped, you are more than welcome to double check us and ensure that we are following the law as well as yourself and the owners that are over your facilities. As my colleague mentioned, for the signature of the applications, they need to be from the owner. Now, if the administrator is the owner of the facility, that's fine. And that usually occurs with residential care and adult daycare homes. Usually the administrator is the owner. But if the administrator is not the owner, the administrator needs to ensure that the owner, someone from the board, someone tied to the operating entity signs and gets the signature notarized for that application. Otherwise, we'll have to deem it incomplete. Do you have any questions at this time? Told you that'd be short and sweet.
Check and see if we have some online. Do you have any questions online?
I have a question. I don't know who would answer it, but I heard, I don't know if this is true, that like a nursing home got surveyed and it was really bad. There's a couple IJs and all kinds of tags happening. The administrator got fired and then a new one came in, and the new administrator got some of those tags and fines and stuff put on her license as well as the one that got fired.
Like I said, if once that other one was fired, we have to know. We don't know automatically when things are happening. So it would be up to that administrator to tell us, and even the one that's incoming, it's up to her or whomever that is to let us know, hey, this is when I came in, because we document the date that they came in with that facility. So in our records, if that date does not coincide with when those IJs occurred, then she won't have any liability for that. But if the dates concur with what happened, then so just let us know.
So day one, if you start as the administrator day one and survey team comes in, finds all these tags and stuff. Whose
Well-
license is that go on?
Well,
It's gonna be up to the survey.
exactly.
And it also depends on if, when you submit the notice of change, make sure the previous administrator on there, you have the departure date on there, because if you just put the previous administrator's name on there and then you put your start date on there, we have no way of determining when that administrator left.
Exactly.
And just like Agnes has said, it's very imperative that you submit the notice of change as soon as possible with, there's any changes with the facility and the correct email address. So we can get that assurance letter out, letting you know that we have received the notice of change or made any changes to your facility's records.
And she touched on a good point. We do have a portion of the notice of change that, that talks of who the previous administrator was and the departure date, as well as the new administrator and the new date that they're coming in. And we ask for that because, as I mentioned before, sometimes facilities do not alert us of administrators, or maybe somebody suddenly quit, they put an interim in real quick, and that person was there for a while. And so sometimes when we get those notices of change and we're seeing a previous person and we're like, well, we don't have that previous person in our system. That person was never here. And so then in regards to the liability situation, that can kind of cover that person, letting us know the dates, because we keep track of those dates of when they came and when they left, and we input that into our system. So as I said, we have an Open Records Act. So if court came and said, hey, this fell on this person and it wasn't supposed to fall on this person, we can provide them the information that we have And that's why it's so imperative that you guys send in everything you got.
And the survey team will call us or contact us because they can look that information up. If it's a question on their part, they're gonna call us and say, what do you guys have on your side to look for? And so it's very important, again, like Agnes said, is to make sure that when the administrator leaves, that they contact us and Espelka here, the long-term care administrator board, to show when they left that facility. Because that will follow them wherever they go.
And keep your letters, your assurance letters, verifying that the facility records was changed and you are the current administrator of record. That also provides the date that you started. It's just not junk mail. It's something that you may want to keep to prevent this type of thing from happening.
Yeah, because I've had an administrator call me, trying to get her timeline, because she had actually like been in and out of a facility. They would call her back once an administrator would leave or not work out, and then she'd have to come back in. And she actually called me one time and was like, can you give me the dates that I was actually here? And I was able to give those to her, so she could prove her case. So.
And remember, you're not only are you supposed to report to us, but to Osbelka, but also remember that Osbelka doesn't communicate with the department. Okay, we're not on one big system. They have their own system, and we have a federal database that we put you guys into. So if you tell them, because when we go look up facilities, you can get in trouble also for not informing them that you're at a facility. So you need to make sure that you're communicating about your status, where your license hangs, and you also need to tell the department. So you have two regulations. You're responsible to two different departments about informing us and them about where you're at. Because if you go and look yourself up, once you get licensed, or if you're already working for a facility, look up the current administrator and see if the facility's name shows up underneath it. Probably 8 out of 10 times it shows that that administrator's at that facility. But like I said, I don't share information with Osbelco, and Osbelco doesn't share information with us unless it's something of the nature that you're not licensed. Then I have to call over here to see if there's another name for you. Because sometimes, and that's another thing, whatever your name is over here in their database, that's the name that also has to be on the application. If you go by like if you look me up over here, it'd be Michael Anthony Todd. But if you go anywhere else, I'm just Mike Todd. So you might want to put parentheses around or quotation marks where you want to say, hey, I go by Mike. If you call me, just call me Mike. What I go by. But officially, my real name is Michael. That's what's going to show up over here. So if you're going by a middle name and it's not your first name, make sure you're putting your first name and your middle name on the applications, on the notice of changes. It makes it a lot easier because we're always trying to guess. Well, they got the same last name. This could
Yeah,
be,
and it doesn't hurt to send us a copy of your license.
Yeah.
So we can look it up there because, you may be Blake, but you go by JoJo. And people will actually sign JoJo. And I'm looking for JoJo and I can't find JoJo.
So hypothetically, just say for instance, like right now, you're in this class and your name is Joe Blow. And you get your license, Joe Blow, but then you get married later. Do you have to submit that information to them to show them that you're
Yes.
married so that they will vote?
And then if you're currently at a facility, you want your record to follow you. So you would contact us and say, hey, there's a change. I got married. Here's my driver's license and my new administrator card showing my new name. Because that's another one that happens. Ladies get married and sometimes professionally they decide to save their maiden name. Sometimes they change it and then they don't tell us. And so then we end up having what's called two records for you. So always try to have all your stuff together.
And if you don't pay your taxes, it does show up.
Yes.
When we're searching to check your license to see if you're active, it'll say OTC.
Yeah, if you have an OTC hole what'll happen is you'll be able to work the rest of the year because you have a license. But when it comes to renewal time, they're not gonna let you renew. And then you're gonna get terminated from your job. So try to keep your taxes up.
So any other questions?
I guess we have one more, talk about sending in the application without payment separately. We need to make sure that those payments go along with the applications when they come in.
Yeah,
Because when we receive an application without a payment, that makes it hard because your application is gonna be put at the end. And we'll send you a letter out saying we didn't receive the payment. Because the payment may come from the home office and you guys send the application. So we wanna make sure that the application and the payment comes together. That way your processing of your application will go smoother and quicker for you.
yeah, because if we received the application without the money,
It's not considered
Right.
received at all.
yeah.
You
And,
get, and a letter will go out.
right, we'll email you and let you know, with the correct email, we'll let you know, hey, this is incomplete due to the following.
But if and here's another thing, if you say no changes and then you leave everything blank and you forget to put the payment in there and you came in last year and you just put your name in there, but you didn't give us your new email address, guess what? We're emailing the old email address and that old person was this contact because you didn't change that information. You just changed the administrator. Because the administrator can be Joe and the contact person could be Sydney at home office. So make sure that if you're gonna be the contact person and there is no Sydney, that, when you're sending that stuff in, you gotta deem yourself, am I the person who's going to be the main contact person with the department? And you can't have it both ways. You say, well, I only handle the surveys and Cindy just handles all the licensing stuff. No, Cindy's gonna also handle the surveys because we put one email address in there for the contact person that we're communicating as one person. Not, oh, if it's a license, we're talking to Cindy, but if it's this over here for a survey, we need to send it to Joe. So you need to communicate how that stuff is going to get to you so you can send in your plan of corrections in and get them correct. If you're gonna be the guy, then you be the guy for everything. If you're gonna be the licensing person, then the licensing person, Sydney, is gonna get everything, including your stuff. So you'll have to submit your plan of corrections and what gets accepted. You could have a good relationship with Sydney. So we only have one contact person.
Yeah, and on our applications, we have an area where it lets you put down who the contact person is, their email and their phone number. So we put that into our system, and when there's a change, we update it.
Do we have a picture of the notice of change? We just pull it up on the.
Just don't wait out now.
Just go to the internet and let's just pull it up online.
Okay. Microsoft.
There it is.
Yeah.
I just think we need a new. I think we need a new tab in the system.
Yeah, it's fun.
Just right click on it and say new window on the down here at the bottom of the system where the Internet Explorer is. Yeah.
Right here?
Where the Internet, right click, say new window.
Open new tab.
Yep.
Okay. Got it.
There you go. Now put it in the house part. Yeah.
And we're under protected health. Once you go through those. You guys can see,
There's the one right there.
and the blue,
They're seeing a specialized facility.
Got it.
And then now go down to other forms of water.
So when you're looking for your particular facility type, it will be.
Yeah, other related, there's, yeah.
Or you can use the agency health index.
Scroll down a little
at the
bit more.
top.
Right there it is. It's very
And,
bottom.
while we're looking for this, I receive a lot of these in the mail and through email, and, the administrator's handwriting is really fancy. Make sure that, your, handwriting, your signature is legible, so we can make the necessary changes. I have received phone calls back from administrators that said, well, you spelled my name wrong. It's like Mike had said, I'm at a guessing game if this is an E or an I. So make sure that it's very legible, and make sure that you put your, it's preferred to put your, business email and not your Gmail. So your assurance letter will go back out to your, business email. We're doing a lot of things electronically, and, we're trying to go paperless, and especially due to COVID. You'll also receive a lot of your license renewal reminders by postcard. You won't receive the packet anymore. It will be sent out in a little postcard. Some people have told me it looks like junk mail, but it's not. It's just reminding you that your facility's license is going to expire between 60 and 90 days. If you have already submitted your facility license renewal and you received that postcard, just disregard it. You don't have to call or say, hey, we already mailed it in. You should have received the assurance letter. If not, just know that the assurance letter is coming. Another thing too is with the notice of change, like we had stated earlier, make sure that you put your effective date on there and then the departure date of the administrator, because we can't go back into the system and change or make up a date for your departure date or the previous administrators. If you have to inquire with someone in the facility, I would inquire with them and put the date in before submitting it.
Also, make sure it's notarized. It's not effective if you don't have it notarized. It has to be notarized.
And you can't notarize it yourself. It has to be someone else.
But, yeah, so this is the form, and if you notice, this is a fillable form. So if you fill it out, and hit print or save as a PDF, then all you have to do is print it out, have it notarized, email it to the department, it's legible. Make sure that what you're changing is right. So everything is on this one box over here, all this is the old, all the new goes here. And then make sure that if your facility doesn't have a designated administrator email address, and they're telling you to use your personal email address, or if they're telling you to use your business one, make sure that you're the person that's going to get those emails for whatever you need, because what's going to happen is you don't change that. A nursing home license is how long? Did we tell you all that yet? 3 years. So if you don't tell us, we won't know until your next renewal. And if you don't tell us then, it's another 3 years. So if you go 6 years, you can get a facility for 6 years. And if you never told us, if you took someone's place, you didn't tell us, and you just kept putting no changes, no changes, no changes for 2 renewals, so let's say 7 years, we have no way of getting a hold of you. So always make sure that what email address is correct. So if you're the person, even if you don't know what the old email address is, and you're the one that wants the emails, then put your email address on there. If the facility has a designated email address, make sure it's correct, put it on there.
And these forms you can save to your desktop too, and just click on them and provide the changes, or just save them, and it'll follow you.
And bookmark the health department's page
Yeah.
for nice nursing home. And just remember, every time you go in, either hit F5 to refresh the screen for your cookies, or the little circle thing up here that says refresh the page. Then re-bookmark it, because when you bookmark it, it saves the cookies, so all the old forms will come back up. So every time you go in, redo the bookmark and F5. Or just use the bookmark, hit F5. That refreshes. That way you'll get all the current forms, Because she'll make me send it back to you if you have an Alzheimer's, and it's what year?
It's 2006 or later.
2006 or later. She'll make me send it back to you and complete a new one. So make sure that you're using the most up-to-date forms when you're submitting stuff.
So I just wanted to make sure that you guys, if you want to go back one more time.
Okay. Is that good?
No, go back to the former page.
The health facilities.
Okay, so in the former page, it was protected health services.
There you go.
Protected health services, you will go here. Health resource development service.
At the top.
And then at the top, health facility system. And it is here that you will find in the blue, all the licensure types. And so if you're needing an application for renewal, and let's say you just want to be proactive and you don't want to wait for us, you can go to any one of these and print off what you need.
And then if you want to you can also use the AZ Health Index, which is an index of all the pages. So if you want a nursing home page, you go to letter N, it'll bring up the nursing home page. Just put a little N. It'll go, here's certificate of need, and here's nursing specialized facilities. However you want to do it. I suggest bookmarking the pages of the facilities you're going to be at on your computer for work. That way you can find stuff. Because we will never ask you to do something that's not a rule or statute. Everything we ask you is in a rule or a statute. If we send you an incomplete letter about an application, it'll have a rule on there about why this was incomplete. You know, so just try to be thorough. Just because your owner tells you there are no changes, fill out that second page just to make sure that information is correct. Because even if you say no changes and you fill that out, we're going to do our due diligence to make sure that there's nothing on there that if there's something did change. If you work in a rural place and you have a rural address and it's being changed due to 911, please provide that documentation so that we can change, so we know that the facility is not moving. It's a 911 address change. So, but just be thorough when you go to new facilities or there's changes at your facilities to make sure that it's all taken care of. And remember, if you started on Friday and you sent that on Monday, are you in compliance? No, you're not. The rule is on or before, not a day after. So, and that means if you email it to us on the date you started, that counts because we'll have the date that you sent it to us. You know, otherwise you're gonna get a letter that says you're not in compliance. But always do it the day on or before. Make sure you're doing everything correct. Make sure that this is one thing I will say real quick. You're the administrator. You're in charge of the whole facility, right? So when the DON has her best friend as an aide and she's covering for her, whose job is it to stand up? It's y'all's job. The facility almost lost her license, and the administrator almost got punished because the DON is covering up for 2 nurse aides that were abusing patients. I'm not gonna say facility names, but that administrator almost lost her job, almost lost her license. Because you need to make sure that if you're telling the DON that you got this complaint, you need to be following back up with your residents to make sure it's still not happening. Don't be intimidated by a nurse aide. You're professionals. Okay? Because that was the thing. These 2 nurse aides intimidated a whole entire facility. See it, report it. You're the boss. Suspend them, investigate it, fire them if it's true. It gets worse when you guys cover it up, because you know what happens? The surveyors find out everything, because you might think that resident might not say anything. I'm going to tell you, those little ladies will squawk as soon as they're by themselves and rat the whole facility out on everything that goes on.
They call late at night, mostly on the weekends when there's hardly any staff, and they're whispering, and it's really sad. And I have to forward it to long-term care, but it's true.
So remember, your license is on the line. If the nurse aide's covering for another nurse aide, you better be on it, because in the end, you're the one that's being held responsible for the operation. You are the one that's interviewing all the nurse aides that goes in there. The DON, you better stress to them, they're working underneath your license. If you're a nurse and you have nurse aides, they're working underneath your license. The board can hold you, the nursing home board can hold you responsible for everything they do. Make sure orders are being taken care of. There's some stuff that I find that, I got a $100,000 fine that I'm investigating right now because no one wanted to check to see if the lady wanted to poop in 3 days. Make sure that they're doing their job. You know, just make sure everybody's doing their job. Do your due diligence. Don't take someone's word for it. Double check. If there's and they had a policy. The surveyors quoted the policy at the facility. They weren't following it. Don't have a nurse ratchet who's not willing to conform to new policies either. You're the administrator, you work hand in hand with the owner. If the owner says this is the policy, that's the policy gets rolled out. You need to make sure that there's ratchets telling them, I'm going to do it the way I always did it. It's how I always did it. It's always worked. Don't need those people. You're licensed. You're in charge. Be responsible. Don't cover things up. Uncover them. Report them. Self-report yourself. Get things fixed, because it looks so much better if you've taken care of things. It goes a lot better.
Plus, all that stuff gets put on the internet. Like, you can Google all the stuff that happens. Nursing Home Compare is on for everybody.
Yeah.
And they detail what happened. The nurse, the administrator, it's all up there.
It won't put your name, but you'll be administrator 1.
So, and you gotta think about it too, like, would you want your family member in there? One day we're all gonna be old. Would you want to be in that situation? You gotta think about it like that. Because I've seen some incredibly crazy situations, and I've worked in a nursing home before, and people tend to just stop caring for some reason. But one day we all will be older, and if we have to have a caregiver, do we want someone who doesn't care?
So not only that, you guys are paying a lot of money to get your license. You don't want to revoke or take it away from you where you can't work. So the thing is, be respectful, be on point, and always understand that this is your livelihood, and you want to make sure that it's working to your advantage too. Okay?
Listen to your residents. Talk to them in confidence. If they're not willing to talk to you in the open, circle back around when they're in the room. Talk to them. Because I guarantee it, if someone would have circled back around and talked to those residents, they would have told about the abuse. For every time they ratted out, they were abused. Every time they got told on, they got abused. It was really sad. So, and it was a good operator. It could happen to any facility.
I don't think any of you be going into this field if you weren't having compassion. So the residents are very important, and so is your job is very important. So remember that. Any more questions? If not, we're gonna let you guys go, and you can come and talk to us, or you can pick up a card if you need to have information later on. We'll be happy to answer those questions for you. Okay?